we're going to help end coal as a fuel in the world. And we have to. It's the single most important change that the world needs to do to create a better environment, better quality of life. And I believe that as Excelerate, we're going to be remembered as a force for good on ending coal.
Hello and welcome to LNG TV and today's episode of LNG Leaders. On today's programme, we are talking Excelerate Energy, Diversity and Entrepreneurial Spirit with Daniel Bustos, Chief Commercial Officer of Excelerate Energy, a pioneer and global leader in floating LNG import solutions. Daniel has spent over a decade helping Excelerate build out the world's largest FSRU portfolio spanning almost every continent. Daniel, a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome, Daniel. Excelerate has a remarkable history and has played an important role opening up energy access and unlocking key growth markets. What's the secret to Excelerate's success?
Well, the way we see the business, contrary to some of the other players, is an energy service business. Excelerate was created not as a company to provide infrastructure or to provide technology. It was always dedicated to find the best way to deliver energy to countries or regions that had unique characteristics. And that hasn't changed over the years. Our strategy has changed. We have adapted to the market, but that idea of delivering energy rather than providing infrastructure or services has been always part of our core. And the other thing is an obsession with the customer. You need to always identify the actual customer to your product. In the energy industry, as you know very well, there tend to be a series of steps of companies involved. Sometimes you have intermediaries, aggregators, and that is fine. It's part of what you have to do. But always know who's going to receive the benefit of your service. And when you do that, you are much better prepared to find the issues and to find solutions and to collaborate to the rest of the players in that chain to make sure that your customers receive the energy. When you do that, you become far more relevant for your markets and far more valuable for the customer. And that tends to put you always in a better position as a company.
And Daniel, looking ahead and securing your position as a company in light of forecast demand, the growth in downstream LNG, and of course, interest in hydrogen, what do you think are some of the most exciting market developments that we might see over the next 5 to 10 years?
It's funny. I actually don't believe that we're going to see some of these earth-shattering changes that we saw in the past 10 years. On our side, for example, making FSRUs the preferred technology for importing LNG in flexible ways, or our ship-to-ship commercial use that opened the game to so many countries, or the US becoming one of the largest producers of LNG. Those were enormous changes for the industry. I actually believe that in the next few years, what we should see is something that I like using the word boring. Boring is not a bad word when you're talking about energy. What I imagine is our companies like Excelerate, the producers, everyone working towards bringing this sense of normalcy and security to the development world. Make sure that companies and users get used to have reliable energy every day. You know what is boring? Boring is waking up in the morning, turning on the light and not wondering if you're going to have light. And that's the kind of boring that we like. So we're not looking so much at new exciting things. We're looking at spreading the benefit of LNG around the world the best possible way.
It was great to see your recent announcement of your partnership with Exxon in Albania, Daniel, and plans for LNG-to-Power, an integrated small-scale LNG facility. Are integrated opportunities increasingly important for Excelerate and the industry at large?
Absolutely. Albania is a perfect example of what we can do when we ally with the right stakeholders. ExxonMobil, of course, one of the world's leaders on LNG production and transportation, and Excelerate complementing that role and bringing a solution for the rest of the chain. And we're going to see that more and more. One of the reasons why is if you look at the record of the LNG industry in terms of opening new markets, we don't have a very good record. Don't get me wrong, I'm very proud of what we've done, but LNG should be far more pervasive. LNG should have entered a much deeper market than what we've done so far. And one of the reasons for that is we're very good at reaching the shore with LNG and with natural gas. But when that gas has to enter that market, it has to actually reach gas customers and power customers, it becomes increasingly complex. So one of the reasons that we're focusing so much on integration is not only that it makes commercial sense. We're already established in several countries around the world, and bringing new opportunities downstream is always good, but it's a necessity. We need to get closer to the customers. We need to make sure that they get a service that is far more encompassing rather than asking those customers to put the pieces together. So we're going to see a lot of integration, not only because it makes business sense, but it actually makes sense as a service for the customers.
So one of Excelerate's founding values was embracing an entrepreneurial spirit, something that served the company well. How has Excelerate managed to retain this as it's expanded rapidly, and how much of an advantage has this been?
Well, one of the things that we did early on, and this is a focus as an energy company comes normally, but when you come from other sectors like shipping or LNG production, it doesn't come as normal, is the need of creating local teams and trusting those local teams. Excelerate Energy, we have our HQs in the Woodlands, Texas. We have a great group of professionals, but those professionals provide services to our business units. We have our business unit in South America, and they're in charge of Argentina, Brazil, and the rest of the region, for example. And under that leadership, they take care not only of the operations, but all the commercial relationships, all the issues with the governments, and the development of new markets. In that way, we managed to keep the actual units that are operating in a smaller size. So that spirit, that drive that makes Excelerate successful can be sustained, provided that as leaders, we are brave enough and smart enough to let the regional leaders take care of the development, take care of the business. And it has been an enormous source of success for us.
Daniel, as a global company with international operations, I want to ask you about diversity. How important is it to Excelerate?
Well, Excelerate has been in an interesting trip regarding diversity, because due to our drive to establish this local presence, these local business units, we became naturally diverse from early on. And it's funny because the diversity push went from these offices to the headquarters. And we realized that although we were very good at diversity, 50% of our senior management is females today, for example. But we realized that just because we were good at it, that wasn't enough. So in 2019, we started working on establishing our DEI program. January 2020, we launched our DEI Council. We have participation from team members around the world that, instead of feeling comfortable because the company is diverse enough, we want to be sure that it's part of our DNA. We want to be sure that through the growth of the company, those values get instilled on everything that we do. And it's a great business practice. It is known, there are numerous reports that show that diversity increases return for shareholders, creates better work environment, makes companies more reliable, safer, more creative. So in our case, as I said, we're very proud of what we've done. We just believe that we cannot stay there.
I'd like to move over and speak a little bit about your journey, Daniel. You've been involved in advancing more FSRUs than almost anybody on the planet across the Americas, the Middle East, and Asia. It would be wonderful to hear a number of your standout moments and memories that you have through all those projects and ventures.
Well, it's funny. I have one of my favorite anecdotes. We were working on the development of our first terminal in Bangladesh, Moshashkali LNG. And we've been working, it was a technically complex project. It's an offshore project operating during the monsoon season at high availability. We had to solve several technical and operational challenges. And we were on that route, and there was a meeting with Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, that was organized in New York during the UN General Assembly. And a group of US companies with presence in Bangladesh were invited to a private luncheon with Sheikh Hasina and her ministers. And we're all sitting there just hearing the speeches. And suddenly we're asked all to just take 20 seconds to introduce the company and make a comment. And of course, I had my comments, and my comment was simply to tell Sheikh Hasina, Your Excellency, thank you very much for trusting Excelerate to do business in Bangladesh. And that was it. So I was the second to make my comment. And when Sheikh Hasina heard the name Excelerate, she looks at me and she says, you. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? You guys are delayed and I don't have the gas. Don't you realize how much we need the gas? She grabbed the Minister of Economic Development and said, explain to this gentleman why we need the gas. And suddenly the meeting that was supposed to be a great opportunity for Walmart, GE, and a bunch of people to hear about development in Bangladesh became the roasting of Excelerate Energy in front of everyone. And actually the meeting ended up with me sitting with a couple of ministers and trying to solve what Sheikh Hasina considered was unacceptable delays. Of course, for her, delays was that the terminal was not ready yesterday, as it tends to be the case. And she's a wonderful lady. She's very strong. But one of the lessons that I got there is it doesn't matter what your contract says. Just look at the position your customer has. Look at the problems they have and be ready for that. Because if you're not ready for that and you tell a prime minister that you're essentially fulfilling your contract, you're going to get in trouble and you're going to get roasted in front of everyone. For me, it was a fantastic moment because it put in a completely different dimension the role that we will have. And if you look at what is happening in Bangladesh today, Excelerate provides 100% of the import capacity. And Bangladesh has announced the largest cancellation of coal-fired plants. And one of the reasons why is because they rely on LNG. So Sheikh Hasina was right. We needed to do better. And I'm happy to see that at the end of the day, we did it. But that wasn't a good day for me.
You've clearly been on quite a journey with some good and some not so good days in your career. You started off studying nuclear engineering. You're now CCO of Excelerate. What advice would you have for those who are just starting out on their careers?
Well, particularly for people that are interested in doing business, my main recommendation is when you pick your training, if you're, for example, planning to go to college or planning to have some postgraduate studies, just do something unique. Don't try to learn to be a businessman. Just make sure that you develop a particular skill, something that proves your employers that you are actually disciplined, that you can follow a long task such as a college degree. And it doesn't matter if that college degree is in law or engineering or math. Prove that you can do something hard, and then you're going to learn to do business. Don't try to acquire your business experience during your training years. And that has another advantage, is that it makes a more diverse workforce. In my team, in my commercial team, of course, I have engineers, but I also have lawyers. I have history majors working for us. And I guarantee you that makes a much better team. So don't get too focused on trying to be the expert on what you're going to do in the future. You're going to have time for that.
That's great advice. Now, as you've evolved as a leader, what's the most valuable leadership lesson you think you've learned?
Make sure that within your team, there's a number of people that truly think that they can replace you in the future. Make sure that those people are there. Make sure that those people know that it's okay to aspire to that. That is not a betrayal or anything like that. If you do that, your team is going to be more successful. And actually, you're going to have the chance to be replaced, but probably because you're going to be going higher, not because you're going to go out. So it takes a little bit of practice if you want. But once you feel comfortable that you have a group of people in your team that can replace you, now you know that you're doing something well.
On more of a personal note, historically, you've spent a lot of time flying around internationally, Daniel. I know your family is incredibly important, likewise your health. What are some of the most important habits you've built up over the years that help you manage both your time and your well-being?
Well, one of the things that I learned, is beyond the typical ones of trying to stay healthy, try not to eat too much, try to dedicate time to your family when you're back, which are, of course, very important and necessary. But one that I learned is when you're on the road, and we all do, we're all very dedicated, we tend to focus a lot on the fact that we are abroad, that we're entertaining customers, that we're working, and we feel that we have to be doing these special things all the time. One thing that I learned is just try to do something normal when you're in a trip. What I mean with something normal is some activity that you enjoy when you're at home. Just try to do it when you're traveling. In my case, what I tend to do is from time to time, I tell my team, guys, see you tomorrow. I will not join you for dinner. And I just go and catch a movie, for example. And you will say, oh, so you're in Dubai, a wonderful city, a million things to do, and you're going to sit at a movie theater. Yes, I do that. And it brings a little bit of down-to-earth normalcy that I believe is incredibly important, because if not, you enter into a cycle that is exhausting. So try to bring a little bit of normalcy. Another thing that I do is I like to cook. So when I go to these countries, I just go to a supermarket and see what they have, see what they eat. Sometimes I buy things that I can bring back home. Something normal, something that is not spectacular is a great thing to mix in your day when you're traveling.
We always like to end on impact. When you look back at a certain point in time, what would you like the impact you've had on the industry and on Excelerate to be, and what would you most like to be remembered for by those that you've worked with, you've done business with, you've partnered with, Daniel?
Well, from my perspective, I think that the largest impact that I want to have is we believe that we're going to help end coal as a fuel in the world. We have to. It's the single most important change that the world needs to do to create a better environment, better quality of life. And I believe that as Excelerate, we're going to be remembered as a force for good on ending coal. And the other one that is incredibly important is ending energy poverty. Energy poverty is something that is still incredibly misunderstood in the US. But if I had to choose something, I would choose the fact that you will go to a village in Bangladesh and a woman is going to be able to get a job because she has a washing machine, so she doesn't need to be 4 or 5 hours per day doing laundry, or her daughter can go to school because she doesn't need to spend so much time doing a basic job. The impact of ending energy poverty, it is much larger and far less understood than the environmental impact of decarbonization, the enormous benefits of LNG. So if I have to choose, I would love for people in the development world to relate our name, Excelerate, as a household name. It's the company that brings us gas and power, and yes, they're there, and we became part of the background. We don't need to be praised every day. I just need to make sure that people rely on us to be able to do something as simple as being able to go to work because there's a machine doing the laundry.
Fantastic to hear, Daniel. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing aspirations and hopefully all achievable in the not too distant future. Daniel, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It's been fascinating listening to you. We look forward to catching up with you soon and hearing more about Excelerate's new ventures. And thank you for joining us on LNG Leaders. We look forward to seeing you again soon.